The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional marketing, legal, financial, or business advice. Content creation strategies and digital marketing trends are subject to rapid change, and the potential outcomes discussed are based on historical trends and specific case studies, rather than universal certainties. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence and consult with qualified professionals before making significant investments in content production or business strategy. The creator of this video assumes no liability for actions taken based on the concepts presented herein. The average American business owner is currently fighting a war they do not even realize they are losing, and the casualty is not just their marketing budget, it is their relevance. Right now, as you watch this, thousands of domestic companies are pouring billions of dollars into a void known as the content graveyard. These are businesses that post once a week, talk exclusively about their own features, and wonder why their engagement numbers look like a flat line on a heart monitor. Statistics in the current U.S. digital landscape indicate that over 90% of small to mid-sized enterprises stop their consistent content efforts within the first 90 days. They do not quit because they lack the money, and they do not quit because they lack the talent. They quit because they ran out of things to say. They hit a wall where the creative well ran dry, and the blank cursor on a Tuesday morning became a psychological weight they could no longer carry. This is the silent killer of American brand growth in 2026. If you cannot command attention, you do not exist in the modern economy. We are living in an era of hypersaturation where the cost of obscurity is higher than the cost of failure. If your business is not generating a minimum of 5 distinct pieces of high-value content every single week, you are effectively handing your market share to the competitor who is. The controversial reality that most consultants will not tell you is that originality is actually a myth that is keeping you broke. The most successful viral channels in the United States do not wait for lightning to strike. They have built an industrial-grade idea factory that ensures they never have to think about what to post ever again. In this deep dive masterclass, we are going to dismantle the creative block entirely and replace it with a systematic infrastructure. This is not about thinking outside the box or waiting for inspiration. We are looking at the mechanics of how top-tier US brands maintain a perpetual presence across every major platform without burning out their teams. We are solving the fundamental problem of the idea vacuum. Today, we are starting a journey that will transform your business from a passive participant in the digital economy into a dominant media powerhouse. By the time we conclude this 10-part series, you will possess a proprietary framework for generating 365 days of high-converting content in less time than it takes to check your emails. We will be analyzing historical trends of breakout brands that utilize specific psychological triggers to stop the scroll of the American consumer. We are going to look at case studies of mundane service-based businesses in the Midwest that turn boring industry knowledge into multi-million view assets. The problem we are solving today is the fear of the empty calendar. We are going to provide you with the exact blueprints to ensure that your brand remains top of mind, authoritative, and perpetually vocal in a crowded marketplace. To understand where we are going, we must first understand the shift in the U.S. consumer mindset. In previous years, a business could survive on quality over quantity. You could hire a production crew once a quarter, make one polished commercial and call it a day. That world is gone. In 2026, the algorithm rewards predictable relevance. If you are not in the feed, you are not in the conversation. The average US consumer is exposed to thousands of marketing messages daily. To pierce through that noise, you need more than just good ideas. You need an infinite volume of resonant ideas. This first installment is about the mental architecture of ideation. We are going to explore why your current brainstorming sessions are likely failing and how to pivot to a data-first observation model. We are moving away from the internal "what do I want to say?" and moving toward the external "what are they already searching for?" This shift alone has the potential to increase organic reach by triple digits, based on historical data from businesses that transitioned from selfish content to selfless education. The promise of this masterclass is simple but profound. We are going to give you back your time. Most business owners spend 80% of their content time wondering what to make and only 20% actually making it. We are going to flip that ratio. We are going to deep dive into the content flywheel, a concept used by the fastest-growing tech startups in Silicon Valley and the most successful retail giants in the Northeast. This system treats ideas as raw materials in an assembly line rather than sporadic gifts from a muse. We will examine how to leverage the 4 pillars of American content consumption: education, entertainment, empathy, and evidence. When you align your business goals with these 4 pillars using the hacks we are about to discuss, the idea block disappears because the world around you becomes a constant stream of usable data. We will also address the specific challenges of the US market, such as localized SEO for service businesses versus national brand authority for e-commerce. We will look at how the deep dive methodology allows a single concept to be fractured into dozens of micro-assets, ensuring that a single good idea can fuel your social media presence for an entire month. This is about working smarter, not harder. It is about moving from the hustle phase of content creation into the systems phase. If you have ever felt the frustration of posting a video you worked hours on, only to see it receive 10 views, this series is your roadmap out of that frustration. We are going to look at the historical trends of hook retention and why the first 3 seconds of your idea are more important than the 10 minutes that follow. We are going to study the pattern interruption techniques that US creators use to hijack the dopamine pathways of the viewer. As we move forward, remember that the goal here is not just to be seen, but to be remembered and trusted. In the American business context, trust is the most expensive currency. Constant, high-value content is the only way to mint that currency at scale. This series is your guide to becoming your own central bank of trust. We are going to start by breaking down the infinite feedback loop, where your customers literally tell you what to make next if you know how to listen. This is part 1 of our 10-part masterclass, and by the time you reach the end of this hour, the way you look at your business, your customers, and your smartphone will be fundamentally altered. You will see content opportunities in every customer complaint, every sales call, and every industry shift. The idea drought ends right now. Let us begin with the first pillar of the infrastructure, the audit of the American attention span. Over the next several thousand words of this masterclass series, we will build your engine piece by piece, starting with the most critical component, the shift from creator to curator of solutions. This is the blueprint for the modern US business to never run out of ideas again. To understand the shift from creator to curator of solutions, we must first examine the psychological profile of the American consumer in 2026. We are no longer dealing with a passive audience that waits for information to be pushed toward them. Instead, we are dealing with a highly sophisticated, skeptical, and time-impoverished demographic that uses digital platforms as tactical search engines for survival and efficiency. If your business is operating under the old paradigm of trying to be interesting, you are competing with Hollywood, professional gamers, and lifestyle influencers with million-dollar production budgets. That is a losing battle. However, if you shift your identity to become a curator of solutions, you occupy a space where there is zero competition, the space of specific utility. Imagine Michael, a business owner in Denver, who runs a mid-sized residential solar installation firm. In early 2026, Michael realized that his traditional marketing, glossy photos of solar panels and generic slogans about saving the planet was generating a click-through rate that was effectively zero. His mistake was trying to be a creator of promotional art. To pivot, Michael stopped looking at his business as a solar company and started looking at it as a library of answers for the high-altitude homeowner. He performed what we call a digital audit of anxiety. He went into localized forums, Reddit threads for the Mountain West region, and the comment sections of major utility providers. He found that people weren't searching for solar panels. They were searching for ways to prevent grid failure during the increasingly volatile spring storms of 2026. They were asking about the specific weight limits of clay tile roofs under heavy snow. They were debating the efficiency of battery storage when temperatures drop below zero. Michael didn't have to invent a single idea. He simply curated the existing anxieties of his market and provided the documented solutions. This is the listener's advantage. Historical trends in the US digital market from 2023 to 2025 showed that brands that prioritized educational utility over aesthetic promotion saw a significant increase in organic lead generation. By 2026, this has become the baseline for survival. When you act as a curator, your content schedule is dictated by the market's needs, not your own creative whims. This removes the pressure of the blank page because your audience is literally handing you the script every single day. Step 1 in this process is the construction of what we call the spreadsheet of sorrows. You must go back through every single customer service email, every recorded sales call, and every direct message your business has received over the past 24 months. You are looking for patterns of friction. Every time a customer expresses confusion, frustration, or a lack of clarity, that is a high-value content pillar. In the case of a legal firm in Atlanta, this might look like a series of videos titled What to Do in the First 10 Minutes After a Multi-Car Collision on I-85. This isn't just an idea. It is a tactical response to a recurring regional trauma. It is curated from reality. Case studies of professional service firms in 2026 indicate that content addressing specific, local logistical hurdles outperforms broad national advice by a factor of 4 to 1. The second step in becoming a curator of solutions involves the inverted pyramid of content engineering. This is a framework where you take a single, complex solution and fracture it into multiple formats to satisfy the different consumption habits of the US public. Let's look at Sarah, who operates a boutique e-commerce brand in Seattle specializing in sustainable home textiles. Instead of just posting a photo of a new linen sheet set, Sarah curates a deep dive masterclass on the science of thermoregulation during humid Pacific Northwest summers. She starts with a long-form video explaining the moisture-wicking properties of specific fabrics compared to traditional cotton. From that one solution, she extracts 5 60-second segments for vertical video platforms focusing on specific fabric tests. She then creates a high-resolution infographic for visual search engines. Sarah isn't creating new ideas for each platform. She is curating one core solution and distributing it through different psychological lenses. We must also discuss the role of external curation. A common misconception for US businesses is that every piece of content must be about their own products. In 2026, the most authoritative brands act as the newsroom for their industry. If there is a new federal regulation affecting small businesses in your sector, you should be the first to break it down for your audience. If there is a technological breakthrough that changes how your service is delivered, you curate that news and explain what it means for the end user. This positions your brand as a trusted advisor rather than a desperate salesperson. Data from historical consumer behavior indicates that the potential outcomes of this strategy include a shortened sales cycle and a higher lifetime customer value, as the consumer perceives your brand as an essential resource for their professional or personal navigation. This transition requires you to abandon the concept of the viral hit. Viral hits are often the result of statistical anomalies and are rarely sustainable for a B2B or localized B2C business. Instead, you are looking for the compound interest of content. Every solution you curate and publish becomes a permanent asset in your digital ecosystem. By the end of 2026, a business that follows this curator model will have a library of hundreds of videos and articles that address every possible objection a prospect might have. This is how you automate the trust-building process. When a potential client searches for a problem and finds your video explaining the solution in detail, the sales call becomes a formality. You have already proven your competence through the curation of high-value information. To execute this at a high level, you must utilize the 2026 social listening stack. This involves setting up specific digital tripwires. You should have alerts for industry keywords, competitor mentions, and regional news that affects your customer base. When a trend breaks, you don't ask what should we make. You ask how does this impact our customers and how can we explain it to them in 3 minutes? This is the definition of fast-paced, high-retention content. It is timely, it is relevant, and it is curated specifically for the person on the other side of the screen. Imagine the impact on your workflow when you realize that your customers are your best creative directors. If 3 people ask the same question in a week, that is a mandatory video. If a competitor makes a claim that is misleading, your curation of the truth becomes your most powerful marketing asset. We are moving away from the era of the monologue and into the era of the documented dialogue. This shift from creator to curator is the psychological foundation upon which all other hacks are built. It is the only way to ensure that your content engine never runs out of fuel, because the world will never run out of problems that need solving. As we move into the next phase of this masterclass, we are going to take this curation model and apply it to a high-speed production framework. Curation is the brain of the operation, but you still need the muscle to get the message out. In the next part, we are going to reveal the exact structural blueprint for what we call the 3-minute authority hack. This is a specific scripting formula used by top US channels to turn raw information into addictive, high-retention narratives in under 180 seconds. You will learn how to open a psychological loop that forces the viewer to watch until the very last frame, and more importantly, how to do this without a professional camera or a scriptwriter. We are going to look at the historical trends of the first 5 seconds of a video, and why most businesses are accidentally training their audience to scroll past them. The gap between obscurity and authority is smaller than you think, but it requires a radical departure from the way you have been told to market your business. the engine is primed, and the data is clear. The businesses that win in 2026 are the ones that stop talking about themselves and start curating the future for their customers. Stay tuned, because the next segment is where we move from theory into the high-stakes world of structural retention. To master the 3-minute authority hack, you must first acknowledge a brutal truth about the 2026 American digital landscape. Your viewer is looking for any excuse to leave. In a world of instantaneous satisfaction and hyper-optimized algorithms, the first 5 seconds of your video are not just an introduction. They are a survival test. Historical trends in viewer retention show that U.S. audiences decide whether to commit to a piece of content in the time it takes to draw a single breath. If you waste that time with a logo animation, a generic greeting, or a vague explanation of who you are, you have already lost. The 3-minute authority hack is designed to bypass the skeptical filters of the modern consumer by delivering high-density utility through a specific structural blueprint. This blueprint begins with the negative outcome aversion hook. In 2026, the U.S. market is saturated with positive aspirational content that often feels like white noise. Data from behavioral science indicates that humans are biologically wired to prioritize information that helps them avoid a threat over information that promises a benefit. For a business owner, this means your opening statement must identify a specific, high-stakes problem that your audience is currently facing or is about to face. Imagine a cybersecurity consultant in Austin named David. If David starts his video by saying, "Hello, I am going to show you how to secure your server," he is a commodity. But if David starts with, "The new federal data compliance laws just went into effect," and if your database is still running on the 2025 protocols, your business is currently an open door for a 6-figure fine, he has captured the immediate visceral attention of every business owner in his jurisdiction. This is not fear-mongering. It is the curation of relevant urgency. Once the hook is set, the authority hack moves into the agitation phase. This is where you explain the complexity of the problem to prove you understand it better than anyone else. You are not just stating the problem. You are detailing its secondary and tertiary effects. For David, this involves explaining how a single data breach leads to a loss of consumer trust, an increase in insurance premiums, and the potential for a total operational shutdown. By expanding on the problem, you are building a psychological bridge between the viewer's current anxiety and your expertise. You are demonstrating that you are not just a service provider, but a navigator of the modern American business storm. The third pillar of this structure is the rapid value injection. This is where most businesses fail by being too vague because they fear giving away their secrets for free. In 2026, secrecy is the enemy of scale. The more you give away, the more authority you command. You must provide a step-by-step solution that a viewer could, in theory, implement themselves. Case studies of successful B2B channels in the United States suggest that when a business provides a clear, actionable roadmap, the potential outcomes include a dramatic increase in inbound inquiries from high-value clients who realize that while they now have the map, they still want the expert to drive the car. Let us look at a case study involving Isabella, a commercial real estate professional in Miami. As of March 2026, coastal property valuations are fluctuating due to new infrastructure assessments. Isabella uses the 3-minute authority hack by breaking down the exact 3-point checklist she uses to vet a property's long-term viability under the new 2026 standards. She explains point 1, the structural integrity audit. Point 2, the new flood mitigation tax credit eligibility. Point 3, the tenant retention score based on local transit shifts. By the 2-minute mark, she has provided more value than a typical hour-long consultation. She is not promising a quick profit. She is providing the educational framework for a sound investment. The retention on her videos is 90% higher than her competitors because every sentence is packed with data rather than fluff. Step by step, the execution of this hack requires you to write your script in a way that minimizes the word-to-information ratio. We call this information density. Every sentence must either introduce a new fact, provide a specific example, or offer a tactical instruction. If a sentence can be removed without losing the core message, it must be deleted. In the 2026 economy, attention is the scarcest resource and information density is how you pay for it. You should also utilize what we call the visual reinforcement layer. Even if you are just a person talking to a camera, you must use on-screen text to highlight key statistics or steps. This caters to the significant portion of the U.S. audience that consumes content in public spaces with the sound turned off. When they see a statistic like 42% of small businesses fail to claim this specific 2026 tax credit, they will stop scrolling and engage. The final 60 seconds of your 3-minute authority hack is the transition of trust. You have identified the threat, agitated the pain, and provided the solution. Now you must bridge the gap to the next step. However, do not use a traditional sales pitch. Instead, use a narrative bridge. Tell the viewer what they need to watch next to complete their understanding. For example, David might say, now that your server protocol is updated, the next point of failure is actually your remote employees' home networks, and I have broken down that exact security audit in this next video. This creates a perpetual loop of consumption, where the viewer moves from one solution to the next, with your brand as the constant guide. To implement this tomorrow, start by choosing one recurring question you receive from your customers. Apply the PASA formula. Problem, agitate, solution, action. Write it out, then cut 50% of the words. Record it, add the text overlays, and observe the data. You will likely see that while your total views might stay the same initially, your average view duration and your conversion rates will begin to climb. This is because you are no longer making content for everyone. You are making content for the person who needs your specific solution right now. The power of the 3-minute authority hack lies in its scalability. Once you have the formula, you can produce one of these videos every day. You don't need a studio. You just need a deep understanding of your customer's current reality in 2026. This is how you move from being a noisemaker to a signal provider. But even with the perfect structure, there is one major hurdle that stops most US businesses from achieving true viral authority: the source of the ideas themselves. Even the best scriptwriter in the world eventually hits a wall if they are only looking at their own business for inspiration. As we conclude this third part of our masterclass, you now have the structural engine to turn raw information into high-retention authority assets. But where do you find the high-octane fuel for this engine when you feel like you have already said everything there is to say? In the next part, we are going to dive into the secret intelligence systems of 2026. We will reveal the automated data mining techniques that allow you to peer into the collective mind of your industry to see exactly what your competitors are missing. We are going to explore how to use historical trend analysis to predict the next big question your customers will ask before they even ask it. If you have ever worried about running out of things to say, the next segment will ensure that your content calendar is overflowing for the next decade. The game of content is won by those who can see the patterns in the noise, and next I am going to show you exactly how to read the static. Reading the static means recognizing that the most valuable ideas for your 2026 content strategy are not locked inside your head. They are buried in the digital exhaust of your target audience. In the United States, every search query, every frustrated comment on a competitor's post, and every seasonal shift in the domestic economy produces a data point. When you aggregate these points, you are no longer guessing what to post. You are answering a demand that has already been voiced in the marketplace. Historical trends in the U.S. tech and service sectors show that companies utilizing predictive search data see 40% higher engagement than those relying on internal creative brainstorming. This is the difference between throwing darts in the dark and using a heat-seeking missile. To build your secret intelligence system, you must first master the art of information arbitrage. This is the process of finding high-value questions in one corner of the internet that have not been adequately answered in the format your audience prefers. For example, a deep-dive technical thread on a forum like Reddit might contain the exact solution to a problem thousands of people are facing. But because it is buried in text, the average American consumer will never find it. Your job is to mine that text and turn it into a high-retention video. Imagine Brandon, who operates a specialized logistics and freight forwarding company out of Columbus, Ohio. In early 2026, the logistics industry faced massive disruptions due to new autonomous trucking regulations and fluctuating fuel surcharges. Brandon did not sit in a boardroom and ask his team for creative ideas. Instead, he deployed an intelligence system. He started by using semantic keyword clustering. He did not just look for freight shipping. He looked for the adjacent anxieties of his customers. He used tools to scrape the people also ask section of Google for 2026. He found that small business owners were searching for terms like insurance liability for autonomous cargo and rural delivery delays 2026. By identifying these clusters, Brandon was able to produce a series of videos that addressed the specific fears of his clients before they even reached out to him. Potential outcomes of this strategy include a 60% reduction in the sales cycle, because the educational heavy lifting was done by the content. The second layer of your intelligence system is the comment section goldmine. This is arguably the most undervalued asset in the American business landscape. You must go to the YouTube channels of your 3 largest competitors, filter their most popular videos from the last 6 months, and sort the comments by newest. You are not looking for the praise, you are looking for the failures. Look for comments that start with "This was helpful, but what about?" or "I tried this and it did not work because." These are the gaps in the market. Every unanswered question in a competitor's comment section is a verified content idea for your channel. If a viewer in Florida is asking a question on a national brand's video and getting no response, and then they find your video specifically answering that question, who do you think they are going to trust? Case studies of mid-market service firms in 2026 show that this specific tactic leads to the highest conversion rates because you are providing the missing piece of the puzzle. Step by step, you should create a master intelligence spreadsheet. This document should have 4 columns: the source, the friction point, the data evidence, and the content angle. For the source, list where you found the idea, such as a specific forum or a competitor's video. For the friction point, describe the exact problem the user is facing in their own words. For the data evidence, use a tool like Google Trends to see if the search volume for that specific problem is increasing. In 2026, you will notice that search patterns are becoming more conversational. People are not searching for plumbing repair. They are searching for "Why is my smart water heater making a clicking noise after the 2.0 update?" Finally, the content angle is where you apply the 3-minute authority hack we discussed in the previous part. Now imagine Chloe, a founder of a SaaS startup in San Francisco that provides remote team management tools. Chloe noticed a historical trend where, every year in late Q3, U.S. businesses start searching for productivity audits to prepare for the new year. Instead of making a generic video about productivity, she looked at the 2026 economic climate. She saw that interest rates and remote work tax credits were the primary topics of conversation in professional groups on LinkedIn. She combined these 2 data points to create a video titled "The 2026 Remote Work Audit: How to Maximize Tax Credits in Team Output." She did not invent this idea. She curated it from the intersection of seasonal trends and current economic data. This brings us to the concept of historical trend mapping, or what we call the echo effect. Most ideas in business content are cyclical. There are certain things the American public cares about in January that they do not care about in July. By looking at your own data from 2024 and 2025, you can predict the peaks and valleys of 2026. If you know that your customers always ask about budget planning in October, you should have your intelligence system mining for the specific 2026 variables of that topic in August. This gives you a 2-month lead time on your competitors. You are not just reacting to the news, you are anticipating the needs of the market. To truly automate this, you should set up specialized digital tripwires. These are automated alerts for specific semantic clusters. Instead of just a Google alert for your business name, set alerts for phrases like "how to solve," "problem with," and 2026 regulation. When a new federal or state law is proposed that affects your industry, your tripwire will trigger, and you will have a content idea before the news cycle even catches up. This is how you maintain a perpetual presence. You are not waiting for inspiration. You are responding to a system that feeds you ideas based on real-world events. The depth of your intelligence system determines the height of your authority. If you are only looking at the surface level, you will produce surface-level content. But if you dive into the specific, granular frustrations of the American business owner in 2026, you will never run out of things to say. You will find that one single customer complaint can be expanded into a 5-part series that helps thousands of people. You will see that a change in the local weather patterns in the Midwest can spark a dozen ideas for a home improvement business. The static is full of information. You just need the right frequency to hear it. However, having 1,000 ideas is only half the battle. The reason most U.S. businesses fail is not just a lack of ideas, but the sheer exhaustion of trying to produce them all. You might have the best intelligence system in the world, but if it takes you 10 hours to produce a single 3-minute video, you will eventually burn out and quit. The content graveyard is filled with businesses that had great ideas but no efficiency. As we move into the next phase of this masterclass, we are going to solve the production bottleneck once and for all. In the next part, we are going to reveal the content multiplication framework. This is the exact system used by high-output U.S. media companies to turn one single idea into 30 pieces of high-performing content across 6 different platforms without hiring a massive team. We will look at how to use the 2026 atomization technique to ensure that you are spending more time growing your business and less time sitting in front of an editing suite. You have the engine and you have the fuel. Now it is time to build the transmission that carries that power to the road. Stay tuned, because we are about to turn your content creation from a manual chore into a high-speed assembly line. The content multiplication framework is the mechanical solution to the creative exhaustion that plagues every American business owner trying to survive the 2026 digital economy. If you are approaching each social media platform as a separate chore, you are not running a business. You are running a treadmill that is designed to break you. In this era of hyperdistribution, the most successful brands in the United States operate like a solar system. At the center is your anchor asset, which acts as the sun. Every other piece of content, your TikToks, your LinkedIn articles, your Instagram Reels, and your X threads, are planets that orbit that sun, drawing their energy and substance from the core. This is what we call the 2026 atomization technique. To implement this, you must first understand the concept of the anchor asset. This is a single high-density piece of content, usually a 10 to 20-minute deep dive video or a 2,000-word white paper, that tackles a significant problem in your industry. For example, let us look at a case study involving Elena, who runs a digital marketing agency in New York City. In the competitive landscape of early 2026, Elena realized that posting random tips about SEO was no longer gaining traction. To pivot, she created one anchor asset per week, a 15-minute video titled The 2026 Privacy Shift: How New Browser Regulations Are Killing Your Lead Flow. This was her sun. It contained 3 heavy data points, 2 case studies of businesses that lost 50% of their traffic, and a 5-step recovery plan. Once the anchor is created, the multiplication begins with the fracture point strategy. You go through your 15-minute video and identify at least 5 fracture points. These are 60-second segments that can stand entirely on their own. Each fracture point must have its own internal structure: a hook, a specific value point, and a micro-resolution. From Elena's video, Fracture Point 1 was the specific explanation of the new privacy laws. Fracture Point 2 was the case study of the failed lead flow. Fracture Point 3 was step 1 of her recovery plan, and so on. By identifying these points, Elena turned one video into 5 high-impact vertical clips for YouTube Shorts and TikTok. This is not just reposting. It is strategically mining for high-retention moments. However, the multiplication does not stop at video. To dominate the US market in 2026, you must perform the linguistic pivot. This involves taking the core message of your anchor asset and translating it into the native language of each platform. The audience on LinkedIn is not looking for the same experience as the audience on TikTok. For her LinkedIn presence, Elena took the transcript of her anchor asset and extracted the core data points to create a 3-part article series. She focused on the professional implications for CMOs and marketing directors, using a tone that emphasized historical trends and potential outcomes for 2027. For X, she broke the same information down into a 12-part thread, using short, punchy sentences designed to spark debate among tech-savvy entrepreneurs. Imagine if you are David, a local plumbing and HVAC business owner in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is mid-July 2026, and a record-breaking heat wave is putting immense strain on residential cooling systems. David records one anchor video on his phone while on a job site, showing exactly why smart thermostats are failing during peak load hours. From that one 8-minute video, David's team, or even a solo entrepreneur using 2026 automation tools, extracts a 30-second clip for Instagram showing the burnt-out wiring, a 300-word post for his local Facebook community group explaining the seasonal emergency rates, and a series of high-resolution photos for Google Business Profile showing the before and after of the repair. David has now occupied 5 different digital spaces with only 1 hour of total effort. The data behind this approach is compelling. Historical trends from the 2024 to 2025 period showed that businesses utilizing a multi-channel content strategy saw a 35% increase in customer trust compared to single-channel brands. By 2026, the potential outcomes of the atomization technique include a massive reduction in the cost per lead, as your organic content is doing the work of an entire sales team. When a potential customer sees you on YouTube, then reads your article on LinkedIn, and then sees a quick tip on TikTok, they develop a psychological sense of your brand's omnipresence. In their mind, you are the only logical choice because you are everywhere they look. The step-by-step workflow for the content multiplication framework looks like this. Step 1. Identify the high-stakes problem using the intelligence systems we discussed in the previous part. Step 2. Record your anchor asset, focusing on information density and authority. Step 3. Extract your 5 fracture points for vertical video. Step 4. Convert the audio into a podcast-ready file. As the 2026 US audience is increasingly consuming long-form audio during commutes in autonomous vehicles. Step 5. Rewrite the core insights into text-based posts for professional networks and community forums. Step 6. Use the visual data points to create high-contrast graphics for visual search engines. One of the most critical aspects of this framework is the platform-native formatting. In 2026, you cannot simply crop a landscape video into a vertical one and expect it to go viral. You must re-record the hook for each platform. This is the 2-second rule of 2026. For a YouTube short, your hook might be a direct visual of the problem. For a TikTok, your hook might be a personality-driven reaction to a trend. Even though the meat of the video, the fracture point, remains the same, the packaging must be adapted. This allows you to maintain the efficiency of multiplication while respecting the unique culture of each platform. Let us look at another scenario. Imagine Sarah, a boutique financial consultant in Seattle. In 2026, new tax incentives for green energy investments were introduced. Sarah created one deep dive webinar as her anchor. She then atomized that webinar into 20 individual pieces of content. She had a clip for the small business owner, an article for the high net worth individual, and an infographic for the general public. By the time the tax season arrived, Sarah was the most searched consultant in her region because her content engine had been providing solutions for months. She did not have to think of 20 ideas. She thought of one great idea and invited the world to see it from 20 different angles. The depth of your brand in 2026 is measured by the frequency of your value. If you only provide value once a week, you are a ghost. If you provide value every day across every platform, you are an authority. The content multiplication framework is the only way for a modern American business to achieve that level of frequency without sacrificing the quality of their work or the sanity of their team. You are moving from a model of creation to a model of distribution. You are no longer a writer or a videographer. You are the chief content officer of your own media empire. However, there is a secret weapon that makes this entire system move twice as fast. Even with the best multiplication strategy, your content will still fail if you cannot master the psychology of the click. You can have the most valuable information in the world, but if the American consumer does not feel a visceral need to click on your thumbnail or stop their scroll on your headline, your atomization is just making noise in an empty room. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dive deep into the visual and linguistic psychology of the 2026 attention hijack. We will reveal the exact color palettes, facial expressions, and high-stakes keywords that are currently dominating the US algorithms. We are going to look at why traditional marketing headlines are dying and what is replacing them in the high-frequency feed. If you want to know how to make your content literally impossible to ignore, you cannot afford to miss what comes next. The engine is built, the fuel is in, the transmission is connected, and now it is time to look at the steering and the speed. Stay with me because we are about to enter the world of high-conversion visual architecture. High-conversion visual architecture in 2026 is the art of winning a battle that lasts less than 100 milliseconds. That is the exact window of time the average American smartphone user spends deciding whether to engage with your content or flick their thumb upward. In this saturated environment, your visual assets, your thumbnails, your cover images, and your lead-in graphics function as the digital storefront of your business. If the storefront looks like every other shop on the block, the consumer will keep walking. To master the attention hijack, we must analyze the specific psychological triggers that are currently dominating the domestic US algorithms. Historical trends from the first half of 2026 suggest a significant pivot away from the overpolished, neon-saturated aesthetic of the early 2020s toward a movement we call authoritative realism. Authoritative realism is defined by high contrast, high-utility imagery that prioritizes the object of the problem over the face of the creator. For years, the gold standard for YouTube and social media was the shocked face or the exaggerated expression. However, data from 2025 and 2026 indicates a phenomenon known as face fatigue among US audiences. Consumers have become neurologically desensitized to manufactured emotion. Instead, they are gravitating toward thumbnails that feature what we call the evidence shot. Imagine James, a professional home inspector based in Phoenix, Arizona. In 2024, James might have made a thumbnail with his face looking worried next to a blurry photo of a house. In 2026, James uses the attention hijack technique. He uses a macro photograph of a single jagged crack in a foundation with a digital level showing a clear, dangerous lean. The text on the screen does not say house problem. It says 2026 foundation failure. This visual provides immediate, undeniable proof of expertise. It is not an ad, it is a warning. The potential outcomes for James were a 400% increase in click-through rates compared to his previous style. This is because the American consumer in 2026 is looking for signals of competence, not signals of performance. To implement this yourself, you must follow the rule of the 3-second story. Your thumbnail must tell a complete story without the viewer needing to read the title. If you are a commercial cleaner, don't show a clean office. Show an ultraviolet light revealing the bacteria on a boardroom table. If you are a software developer, don't show a laptop. Show a red lines of code error that every developer recognizes. You are looking for the pattern interrupt, the visual that breaks the flow of the feed because it looks like a piece of vital information rather than a marketing asset. Step by step. Building this visual architecture requires a deep dive into the 2026 color palette of trust. In the United States, certain colors carry deep-seated psychological associations that have shifted due to the economic climate of the mid-2020s. We are seeing a move toward safety yellow, regulatory blue, and alert red. These are the colors of infrastructure, law, and urgency. When you use a specific shade of regulatory blue for your text overlays, you are subconsciously signaling to the U.S. business owner that your content is official, stable, and professional. Conversely, avoid the pastel gradients and neon purples that were popular in the creator economy of 2022. These now signal amateurism and low-value entertainment to a business audience. Next, we must address the linguistic architecture of the headline. In 2026, the curiosity gap has evolved. Traditional clickbait headlines are being penalized by both users and algorithms because they fail to deliver on their premise. Instead, we use the value anchor. A value anchor is a headline that combines a specific time frame, a specific demographic, and a high-stakes outcome. Imagine a case study involving a mid-sized insurance brokerage in Chicago. They shifted their content headlines from how to save on insurance to the 2026 liability loophole for Illinois logistics firms. By narrowing the demographic and mentioning a specific year and a specific pain point, the liability loophole, they created a headline that was impossible for their target client to ignore. Historical trends show that hyperspecific headlines outperform broad ones by a factor of 10 to 1 in the B2B space. The structure of your headline should follow the friction resolution model. The first half of the title identifies the friction, the 2026 tech talent shortage, and the second half hints at the resolution, the retention framework for U.S. startups. This tells the viewer exactly what they are going to get and why they need it right now. We are also seeing the rise of negative constraint titles. These are headlines that focus on what the viewer is losing or missing out on. Instead of 5 tips for better marketing, use the 5 reasons your 2026 marketing budget is failing. This taps into the loss aversion psychology we discussed earlier. It forces the viewer to click out of a need to verify they aren't making those mistakes. To execute the attention hijack at scale, you should utilize AI-driven heat map analysis, which has become a standard tool for U.S. businesses in 2026. These tools allow you to upload a thumbnail and see exactly where the human eye will land first. You want the eye to land on the evidence shot, then move to the value anchor text. If the heat map shows the viewer looking at a useless background element, you have failed the visual architecture test. You must also account for the dark mode shift. Statistics show that over 80% of U.S. professional users view content in dark mode. If your thumbnails use thin, dark fonts, they will disappear. You need thick, high-contrast typography with a subtle outer glow or drop shadow to ensure legibility against the dark interface of the 2026 apps. Another critical element is the microcopy. These are the small bits of text on your thumbnail that provide context. In 2026, we have moved away from full sentences on thumbnails. We now use keyword clusters. If your video is about commercial real estate, your microcopy should be just 2 words. 2026 data. This acts as a timestamp of relevance. If it says 2026, the viewer knows it is not outdated information. In a world where information spoils faster than milk, the date is your greatest authority signal. Imagine if you are Sarah, the financial consultant we mentioned earlier. For her video on green energy tax credits, her thumbnail was not a picture of a dollar sign. It was a high-resolution photo of a specific 2026 federal tax form with a red circle around a particular line item. The text simply said the missing credit. This thumbnail works because it creates a specific, localized mystery that only her video can solve. It is a visual open loop. The potential outcomes of this specific visual strategy included her video being shared in professional accounting circles, not because it was entertaining, but because it looked like a necessary briefing. As you build your content engine, remember that the visual architecture is the bridge between your intelligence system and your multiplication framework. You can have the most sophisticated data mining and the most efficient production line, but if the bridge is broken, no one will ever see your work. You must treat your thumbnail and title with the same level of technical rigor that you treat your product or service. This is not art, it is engineering. You are engineering a reaction. You are engineering a click. And in the competitive American market of 2026, if you are not engineering the attention hijack, you are simply hoping for luck. But getting the click is only the beginning of the relationship. Once you have successfully hijacked their attention and brought them into your ecosystem, you face a new challenge, the conversion of the skeptic. In 2026, a view is not a lead, and a subscriber is not a customer. To turn that fleeting attention into a measurable business outcome, you must master the art of the invisible sales funnel. You need a way to move someone from a 3-minute video into a high-ticket consultation without them ever feeling like they are being sold to. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to deconstruct the community conversion engine. We will reveal the specific psychological triggers used to build a loyal, paying audience in the US market, and how to use the 2026 feedback loop to turn your viewers into your most effective sales force. We are going to look at the historical trends of community-led growth and why the traditional sales pitch is officially dead. Prepare yourself because we are moving from the psychology of the click to the psychology of the commitment. In the American market of 2026, the traditional sales funnel has been replaced by the community flywheel. If you are still trying to push prospects through a linear path from awareness to consideration to purchase, you are fighting a losing battle against the psychological fatigue of the modern consumer. Data from the domestic U.S. market indicates that 84% of business-to-business buyers now prioritize peer-to-peer recommendations and community-led validation over any form of corporate messaging. This shift has given rise to the psychology of the commitment, a framework where your content serves as a high-density filter that attracts the right audience and repels the wrong one before a single dollar is ever discussed. Historical trends show that the most successful viral channels for U.S. businesses in 2026 have moved away from being broadcasters and have instead become moderators of high-stakes industry dialogues. To understand how to turn a viewer into a committed community member, we must examine the concept of trust arbitrage. In 2026, trust is more difficult to manufacture than ever before due to the saturation of synthetic content. However, this creates a massive opportunity for the business that can provide raw, documented proof of community engagement. Potential outcomes for brands that master this include a 70% higher retention rate and a significant reduction in customer acquisition costs. Consider the case of Robert, an industrial consultant based in Detroit who specializes in the 2026 transition to automated manufacturing floors. Robert realized that his standard educational videos were getting views but not conversions. To pivot, he built the 2026 manufacturing feedback loop. Every Friday, Robert would post a video that highlighted a specific failure or friction point he encountered on a job site that week. He would not give the solution immediately. Instead, he would invite his audience to diagnose the problem in the comments. He created a psychological environment of participation. Imagine if you are an engineering manager in the Midwest seeing dozens of your peers debating a technical solution under Robert's video. By the time Robert posted the follow-up video explaining the correct historical trend for fixing that specific issue, his audience was already psychologically committed to his expertise. They weren't just watching a video, they were participating in a masterclass. Robert's brand became the town square for his industry. When these managers needed a consultant, they didn't look at a directory. They looked at the person who had been facilitating their professional growth for months. Step by step, the construction of this community conversion engine requires 3 distinct layers of interaction. Layer 1 is the low-friction entry. This is your 3-minute authority content that we discussed in previous parts. Its only job is to prove you understand the problem. Layer 2 is the micro-commitment phase. This is where you move the viewer from a passive observer to an active participant. In 2026, this is often done through what we call the utility opt-in. Instead of asking for an email to send a newsletter, you offer access to a specific, real-time data asset. For a real estate firm in Phoenix, this might be a live-updating heat map of 2026 zoning changes. By accessing this utility, the user has made a micro-commitment to your brand's ecosystem. Layer 3 is the identity-based belonging. This is the deepest level of commitment where the viewer begins to identify as a member of your community. In the United States, professional identity is a powerful driver of behavior. If you can make your audience feel like they are part of an elite group of informed insiders, their commitment to your brand becomes part of their professional persona. This is achieved through the 2026 moderation model. You must spend as much time responding to comments and facilitating peer-to-peer connections as you do creating the content itself. Case studies of successful tech companies in Austin show that brands with a dedicated community manager who facilitates these high-value interactions see a threefold increase in lifetime customer value compared to those who simply post and ghost. The invisible sales funnel works because it removes the friction of the pitch. In 2026, the pitch is the signal for the consumer to leave. However, if your content has already solved 5 minor problems for a viewer, the 6th problem, the major one that requires your paid service, becomes a natural point of transaction. This is the zero-friction conversion. You are not selling. You are fulfilling a request for more help. We must also look at the role of user-generated authority. When a member of your community shares their own success story or uses your data to solve a problem, you must curate that and turn it into new content. This creates a self-sustaining cycle of proof. Historical trends in U.S. consumer behavior suggest that third-party validation within a community is 10 times more effective than any self-proclaimed expert statement. Imagine if you are Maria, who owns a specialized commercial insurance agency in Jersey City. In early 2026, the market for cyber liability insurance shifted dramatically due to new interstate regulations. Maria didn't just tell people to buy insurance. She created a private LinkedIn group called the 2026 Cyber Resilience Circle. She invited her clients and her prospects to share their own experiences with digital threats. When one business owner shared how they avoided a breach using a specific protocol Maria had mentioned in a video, that testimonial became the most powerful piece of content in her entire library. Maria didn't have to sell the insurance. The community sold the necessity of it through shared experience and mutual education. The 2026 feedback loop also serves as your most accurate content calendar. When you have a committed community, you no longer need to use intelligence systems to guess what they want. They will tell you. You can use polls, direct questions, and the analysis of their internal debates to see exactly where the next friction point is appearing. This ensures that your content is always ahead of the curve. You are providing solutions to problems the general market hasn't even realized are coming yet. This predictive authority is what separates the viral leaders from the background noise. To implement this tomorrow, look at your current content and ask, what is the one thing I am asking my audience to do after they watch? If the answer is nothing, you are losing. If the answer is buy now, you are scaring them away. The answer should be join the conversation. Give them a specific prompt, a specific place to go, and a specific value to contribute. In the American business context, people want to be seen as experts in their own right. If you provide the platform for them to demonstrate that expertise, they will reward you with their loyalty. The goal of your 2026 content strategy is to build a wall of trust so thick that no competitor can penetrate it, regardless of their advertising budget. However, even with a thriving community and a brilliant strategy, the physical act of producing this much high-value content can still feel like an insurmountable wall. Many U.S. business owners understand the theory but fail at the execution because they are still using 2022 production methods for a 2026 marketplace. They are spending too much time on the wrong technical details and not enough on the speed of relevance. As we move into the 8th part of this masterclass, we are going to tear down the technical barriers. We are going to reveal the 2026 production tech stack, the specific, low-cost, high-speed tools and workflows that allow a single individual to produce studio-quality content in minutes, not hours. We will explore the shift toward the minimalist aesthetic and why high production value can actually hurt your trust metrics in the current U.S. economy. We are going to look at the automated editing protocols that handle 90% of the heavy lifting so you can focus entirely on the strategy and the community. If you have been held back by the fear of the camera or the complexity of the software, the next segment is your liberation. We are about to move from the mind of the strategist to the hands of the technician, and the results will fundamentally change your daily workflow. The liberation of your content workflow begins with the destruction of the high production fallacy. In the American business landscape of 2026, there is a measurable inverse correlation between excessive production value and consumer trust. Historical trends from the early 2020s showed a fascination with cinematic transitions and neon-lit studios, but by 2026, the US audience has developed a sophisticated filter for what they perceive as overproduced corporate propaganda. When a video looks too perfect, the modern viewer subconsciously categorizes it as an advertisement, and their defensive barriers immediately go up. The production tech stack of 2026 is built on the philosophy of lo-fi authority. This is the practice of using high-quality hardware to capture raw, authentic moments that feel like a direct FaceTime call with an expert rather than a broadcast from a boardroom. Imagine Thomas, a mid-sized estate planning attorney in Chicago. In 2024, Thomas spent $15,000 building a professional studio in his basement. He had a 3-camera setup, a soundproofed room, and a dedicated editor. He was producing one video a week, and his average view duration was less than 30 seconds. The problem was not the information, it was the friction. Thomas felt he had to dress in a full suit and spend 2 hours prepping for every shoot. The content felt stiff and the audience felt the distance. In early 2026, Thomas pivoted. He sold the studio equipment and moved to a smartphone-only workflow. He began filming 30-second insights from the front seat of his car, or while walking into a local courthouse. The potential outcomes were immediate. His engagement rate tripled because he was finally meeting his audience where they actually lived, in the real messy, fast-paced world. The first component of the 2026 tech stack is the computational power of the smartphone sensor. By 2026, the neural processing in standard flagship mobile devices has made traditional DSLR cameras a luxury rather than a necessity for business content. The key is not the resolution but the aperture and the depth of field. To achieve the minimalist aesthetic that signals authority, you must master the one-take technique. This involves using a teleprompter application that scrolls at your natural speaking pace, allowing you to maintain direct eye contact with the lens. In the US market, eye contact is the primary signal of confidence and transparency. When you look directly into the camera while delivering complex data, you are psychologically removing the barrier between your expertise and the viewer's need. The second, and perhaps most critical component, is the audio. While 2026 audiences will forgive a grainy video, they will immediately abandon any content with poor sound. We call this the invisible retention killer. Historical data indicates that viewers describe poor audio as a physical irritant that causes them to click away within seconds. However, the solution in 2026 is no longer a $1,000 microphone. It is the integration of neural noise cancellation software. You can now record on a busy street in Manhattan or a windy job site in Texas, and the software will isolate your vocal frequency while stripping away the environmental static. Step by step, your audio protocol should be: record with a simple lapel microphone, run the file through a neural enhancer, and normalize the levels to -3 decibels. This creates a broadcast-quality vocal presence that commands attention, even in a noisy scrolling environment. Let us look at a case study of Linda, an interior designer in Nashville. Linda's content strategy involves filming high-stakes walkthroughs of construction sites. In 2026, she uses a minimalist setup consisting of her phone, a small LED panel attached to the top of the device, and a wireless microphone. Because her setup is lightweight, she can produce content in the moment when a problem occurs. When she finds a structural issue behind a wall, she hits record. She doesn't wait for a crew. She provides the solution in real time. This immediacy is the currency of 2026. Potential outcomes of this lo-fi approach include a higher frequency of posting and a more loyal community, as the audience feels they are getting a behind-the-scenes look at a professional's true daily reality. The third pillar is the 2026 lighting rule: natural, key, and bounce. You do not need a lighting rig that generates heat and requires an electrician. You need to understand the direction of light. In the United States, the gold standard for authority lighting is the 45-degree offset. Position yourself near a window so the light hits one side of your face at a 45-degree angle, creating a soft shadow on the other side. This adds depth and perceived professional quality without the need for equipment. If you are filming at night, use a single softbox light and a white foam board to bounce the light back onto the shadowed side of your face. This simple bounce technique is the secret of high-end cinematographers, and it costs less than $20. Now we must address the most significant bottleneck in the content engine: the editing. In 2026, manual editing is a relic of the past for most high-frequency businesses. We now use the atomization protocol for editing. This involves tools that automatically strip out dead air, filler words like and ah, and pauses longer than 0.5 seconds. This creates the fast-paced, punchy cadence that US viewers have been conditioned to expect. Step by step, you upload your raw footage, apply the jump cut filter, and then use automated captioning. In 2026, captions are not optional. Over 70% of US mobile users watch video with the sound off while in public spaces or at work. Your captions must be large, high contrast, and dynamic, appearing word by word to mirror the rhythm of your speech. The final element of your tech stack is the batching protocol. To never run out of ideas, you must separate the thinking from the doing. Set aside 2 hours on a Tuesday morning, traditionally the highest energy period for the American workforce, and record 4 to 8 videos at once. Because your tech stack is minimalist, you can switch locations within your office to give each video a fresh look. One at your desk, one by the window, one in the conference room. This allows you to produce a month's worth of authority-building content in less time than it takes to have a long lunch. You are building a repository of assets that can then be processed through the multiplication framework we discussed earlier. The minimalist aesthetic is more than just a cost-saving measure. It is a strategic positioning. It says, I am too busy solving real problems to spend all day in a makeup chair. It says, the value of my information is so high that it doesn't need to be dressed up. In the competitive 2026 market, this confidence is infectious. You are moving away from the role of a performer and into the role of a practitioner. You are not a YouTuber. You are a business leader who uses YouTube as a tactical communication tool. By mastering these low-cost, high-speed tools, you have removed the final excuse for not showing up in the feed. But even with the world's most efficient production engine and a community that trusts your every word, there is still one final bridge to cross. Having a great video is useless if the platform's algorithms decide to hide it from your target audience. You might have the best audio, the perfect lighting, and the most actionable solutions, but if you do not understand the 2026 distribution hack, you are still shouting into a void. In the next part of this masterclass, we are going to dive into the dark art of algorithmic signals. We will reveal how to trigger the 2026 recommendation engine so that your content is pushed specifically to the decision makers in your industry. We are going to look at the historical trends of metadata and why the traditional use of tags and descriptions has been completely replaced by semantic video analysis. If you want to know how to make the platforms work for you as a free sales force, you are ready for the next level of the infrastructure. We have built the car, and now it is time to map out the highway. Stay focused because the next segment is where we turn your views into a permanent, self-scaling lead generation machine. To turn your content into a self-scaling lead generation machine in 2026, you must first master the science of semantic distribution. The days of gaming the system with hidden tags and keyword-stuffed descriptions are officially over. In the current US digital landscape, the algorithms powering platforms like YouTube and LinkedIn have moved beyond simple text matching. They now utilize multimodal semantic analysis, meaning the AI literally watches your video, listens to your vocal cadence, analyzes the objects in your background, and maps the entire transcript against a massive vector space of user intent. If you want the recommendation engine to act as your unpaid sales force, you must learn to feed the machine the specific semantic signals it requires to identify your ideal customer. Historical trends from 2024 and 2025 showed a massive shift toward what engineers call interest graph modeling. By 2026, this has evolved into intent prediction. The algorithm is no longer just looking for people who like business. It is looking for people who are currently exhibiting the digital behaviors of someone about to make a high-ticket purchase in your specific niche. For a US-based business, this means your verbal script is your most powerful SEO tool. Because the AI transcribes every word you say in real time, you must strategically weave your industry's 2026 semantic clusters into your natural speech. We call this the verbal metadata strategy. Imagine Kevin, a specialized industrial equipment lessor based in Columbus, Ohio. In the early months of 2026, Kevin realized that his videos were being shown to general hobbyists rather than the plant managers he needed to reach. To pivot, he stopped using broad terms like machinery and started using hyper-specific phrases like 2026 logistics throughput requirements and localized supply chain redundancy. By using these phrases verbally within the first 60 seconds of his videos, Kevin triggered the algorithm's semantic recognition. The system recognized that only a specific type of professional uses that vocabulary. Consequently, the recommendation engine began pushing his content specifically to the LinkedIn and YouTube feeds of manufacturing executives in the Midwest. Kevin did not pay for these leads. He earned them by speaking the algorithm's preferred language. Potential outcomes for Kevin included a 200% increase in qualified inquiries within a single quarter, simply because his distribution was now aligned with high-intent users. The second pillar of the distribution hack is the visual context signal. In 2026, the AI analyzes the pixels of your video to categorize your expertise. If you are a medical consultant but your background is a generic kitchen, the algorithm receives a conflicting signal. However, if your background contains industry-specific elements, books on 2026 healthcare regulations, a specific piece of diagnostic equipment, or even a professional-grade office setting, the visual metadata reinforces the verbal metadata. This creates a high-confidence score for the algorithm. It confirms that you are exactly who you say you are. This is why the minimalist authority aesthetic we discussed in the previous part is so effective. It strips away the visual noise that confuses the AI and focuses entirely on the signals of your profession. A critical step in turning views into leads is understanding the 2026 retention-to-action ratio. Most businesses make the mistake of measuring success by total view count. In the 2026 US economy, this is a vanity metric that can actually hurt your business. If 10,000 the wrong people watch your video, the algorithm will keep showing it to more of the wrong people, effectively polluting your lead pool. You want high retention among a very small, very specific group. This is where the case study bridge comes into play. Within the middle of your video, you must present a detailed scenario that only your ideal client would find relevant. Imagine if you are Jessica, a corporate tax strategist in Austin, Texas. In 2026, the IRS introduced new digital asset reporting requirements for small to mid-sized enterprises. Jessica created a video that spent 5 minutes deep diving into the specific technical hurdles of these new forms. To a general viewer, this was incredibly boring and they clicked away. To a business owner facing a deadline, it was the most important video they had ever seen. The algorithm noticed that while 70% of people left the video early, the remaining 30% watched until the very end and then clicked the link in her description. The platform identified this as a high-intent signal. It realized that while this video wasn't for everyone, it was essential for a specific subset of users. The engine then prioritized showing that video to every other business owner in Jessica's region who had recently searched for 2026 tax compliance. The transition from a viewer to a lead happens through the low-friction bridge. In 2026, you must avoid the high-pressure sales pitch at the end of your content. Instead, you offer a recursive value loop. If your video solved problem A, your call to action should be a link to a resource that solves problem B, which is the natural next step. For Jessica, this wasn't a call to book a consultation. It was a link to a 2026 tax deadline checklist. This is a lead magnet that feels like a continuation of the education. When the viewer downloads that checklist, they move from the platform's ecosystem into your own ecosystem. This is how you build a self-scaling machine. The platform finds the person, provides the initial trust, and your content facilitates the handoff. Historical trends indicate that the potential outcomes of this automated distribution are far more stable than traditional paid advertising. When you pay for an ad, your leads stop the moment you stop paying. When you build an algorithmic lead machine through semantic content, your videos continue to work for you for years. A video recorded in March of 2026 can still be generating leads in December of 2027 because the semantic signals remain relevant to the search queries of the future. You are building a digital asset that appreciates in value as the algorithm gains more data on who your ideal customer is. Step by step, your distribution checklist should be as follows. First, identify the 5 semantic clusters your customers are using in 2026. Second, ensure those clusters are spoken clearly within the first minute of your video. Third, align your visual background with your industry to provide a clean signal to the AI. Fourth, use a mid-roll case study to filter out low-intent viewers. Fifth, provide a low-friction bridge to an owned asset. This process ensures that every view you receive is a step toward a conversion, rather than just a number on a screen. As you implement these distribution hacks, you will begin to see a shift in your business. You will no longer be chasing the market will be finding you. The friction of sales will begin to dissolve because the algorithm has done the vetting for you. By the time a prospect reaches out, they have already been educated by your content, validated by your community, and filtered by the platform's own intelligence. You have successfully turned your content creation from a chore into a primary revenue driver. But there is one final piece to this puzzle. To truly dominate the US market and ensure that your brand becomes a legacy authority, you must understand the long-term content moat. In an era where AI can generate content in seconds, what is the one thing that will keep your business uncopyable? How do you ensure that your idea factory doesn't just produce content, but produces a brand that is immune to competition for the next decade? In the final part of this masterclass, we are going to explore the concept of the 2026 personal brand fortress. We will reveal the advanced storytelling techniques that create an emotional lock with your audience, and how to leverage your data to predict the 2027 and 2028 market shifts before anyone else. We are going to tie everything together, from the first spark of an idea to the global scale of your authority. The journey is almost complete, and the final step is what will ensure you never have to worry about running out of ideas or customers ever again. Stay with me for the conclusion of the content creation blueprint. The 2026 Personal Brand Fortress is the final evolution of the content creation engine, representing the transition from a business that creates content to a business that is a media authority. In an era where generative AI can produce thousands of articles in seconds, the only uncopyable asset you possess is the intersection of your specific expertise, your unique datasets, and your human perspective on the US domestic market. Historical trends suggest that as the volume of automated content increases, the value of verified human authority undergoes a massive premium shift. By 2026, the American consumer is no longer just looking for a solution. They are looking for a soul behind the solution. This is the foundation of your fortress. To build this fortress, you must implement the narrative moat. A narrative moat is a sequence of stories and documented experiences that an AI cannot replicate because they are tied to your physical reality and specific client interactions. Imagine Catherine, a healthcare technology consultant based in San Diego. In 2026, Catherine realized that her technical advice was being mirrored by automated bots across all social platforms. To differentiate, she began a content series called the Tuesday Morning Postmortems. In these videos, she didn't just talk about healthcare tech. She shared the specific, messy details of why a particular implementation failed for a regional hospital group in 2025. She detailed the human errors, the localized bureaucratic hurdles in California, and the specific emotional toll it took on the nursing staff. This content is uncopyable because it is grounded in a unique time, place, and set of emotions. Potential outcomes of this narrative moat included a surge in high-ticket consulting offers from organizations that valued her transparency over the sanitized, perfect advice of her competitors. The second layer of the fortress is the data predictive moat. As a US business owner in 2026, you sit on a goldmine of first-party data. Every sales call, every customer feedback form, and every local market fluctuation is a data point that your competitors do not have. You must turn this data into predictive content. While everyone else is reacting to the current news, you use your internal trends to forecast the next 6 months. For example, if you run a construction firm in North Florida, and you notice a 20% spike in requests for hurricane-resistant roofing materials in January 2026, that is a leading indicator. You don't wait for the news to report on it in June. You create the content in February titled the 2026 Storm Shift. Why North Florida homeowners are changing their roofs early. By the time the rest of the market catches on, you have already established yourself as the predictive authority. Historical trends show that the first brand to identify a shift in consumer behavior captures the lion's share of the resulting search traffic and trust. Step by step, you build this predictive moat by conducting a monthly data harvest. On the last Friday of every month, you review 3 internal metrics: the most common question your sales team received, the specific regional event that caused the most friction for your clients, and the one piece of advice your clients ignored that led to a negative outcome. You then turn these 3 points into your content pillars for the following month. You are not guessing. You are translating your business reality into a public service. This ensures that your content is always fresh, always relevant, and always ahead of the curve. The third pillar of the fortress is the ethical lock. In the United States, the 2026 market is increasingly polarized and values-driven. A brand that stands for nothing is a brand that is easily replaced. The ethical lock involves taking a clear, authoritative stance on industry standards, regulations, or practices. Imagine if you are Mark, a cybersecurity firm owner in Seattle. While other firms are vaguely promising safety, Mark uses his content to call out the poor security standards of specific software providers that are failing U.S. small businesses in 2026. He takes a stance. He says, "We refuse to work with these protocols because they are no longer safe for the American entrepreneur." This creates an emotional lock with his audience. They aren't just buying his service, they are buying into his values. Case studies of companies that took a definitive stand in 2026 show a significant increase in brand loyalty, as the consumer feels a shared sense of mission with the provider. Now, imagine the compounding effect of these three moats working together. You have a narrative that no one can copy, data that no one else sees, and an ethical stance that makes you irreplaceable. This is how you move from the constant hustle of idea generation into the serenity of authority. You no longer worry about what to post because your business life is the post. Every challenge you face is a story for your narrative moat. Every data point you collect is a brick in your predictive moat. Every decision you make is a reinforcement of your ethical lock. You have reached the state of perpetual relevance. In the 2026 economy, the potential outcomes for a business that achieves this level of authority are staggering. You are no longer competing on price, you are competing on trust. When trust is high, the sales cycle is short. When authority is absolute, the need for paid advertising diminishes. You have built a self-scaling lead generation machine that actually gains momentum as the market gets more crowded. The more noise there is, the more your clear, authoritative human voice stands out. However, the fortress is not a static structure. It is a living organism. To maintain it, you must continue to iterate on the frameworks we have discussed in this 10-part masterclass. You must keep your intelligence system sharp, your production stack minimalist, and your community flywheel spinning. You must remember that content creation in 2026 is not an appendage of your marketing department. It is the heartbeat of your business strategy. To implement the final stage of this blueprint today, you need to identify your first narrative brick. What is the one thing that happened in your business this week that an AI could never have known? What is the one specific friction point a client faced that surprised you? Start there. Document it. Share it. Bridge it to a solution. By doing this, you are not just making a video. You are laying the first stone of your personal brand fortress. As we conclude this deep dive masterclass, you now possess the complete architecture for content dominance in the 2026 US market. You have the hooks to hijack attention, the structures to build authority, the systems to never run out of ideas, and the moats to remain uncopyable. But there is one final, high-stakes variable we haven't discussed: the transition from organic authority to the 2027 hybrid ad content synergy. While you now have the organic engine, there is a way to pour liquid oxygen on this fire using a specific, non-traditional advertising framework that is just starting to emerge in the coastal tech hubs. If you are ready to see how the most elite 1% of US businesses are scaling this exact blueprint into 9-figure territories, you need to be prepared for the next level of the infrastructure. The blueprint is in your hands, but the construction has only just begun. The question is no longer can you create content, but how fast will you build your fortress? Your audience is waiting for their navigator. It is time to step into the light and lead.